Hi, welcome back. This is a new lecture, so we're going to start with a new concept and a topic that we have not covered so far. We're going to begin with the systems thinking and going to talk about what is design thinking and what are the steps involved in the design thinking processes. I'm going to again share my screen with you for you to understand what is systems thinking and design. Yeah. So here we are. We are going to focus on what exactly is this very systematic way of thinking through the problem. It is a method of thinking whereby you can solve problems. And I am not talking just about social problems, we're talking about all kinds of problems. So design thinking and system thinking is actually applicable across the sectors. It cuts across the sectors and organizations, think tanks, policymakers, and of course the business people and social entrepreneurs do adopt this methodology of thinking. So it's a very systematic and scientific way of thinking and looking at a problem from a full holistic perspective. And when you look into a problem through a very holistic perspective, you are taking a 360 view of a problem and thereby analyzing it thoroughly and critically. The chances of you coming to a correct solution to the problem becomes larger and more probable. So it is actually, antithetical to the concept of, whimsical, intuitive thinking. And when I'm saying it is antithetical to intuitive thinking, I'm not disregarding the power of intuition. Sometimes intuitive decisions are very, very robust and good decisions also. But the systems thinking is about seeing the whole rather than just the part. So it's a very, very overarching, comprehensive, a kind of an understanding and perception which you need to develop through just rechecking how you have been thinking all along whenever you were faced with a problem. So it's a concept of seeing the whole rather than parts, and also for seeing the patterns of change, identifying those patterns in the systems rather than just dissecting or just thinking about the static snapshots, and for understanding of the subtle interconnections and interrelatedness, interlinkages that happens between the various parts which composes of a whole. And that gives a unique character to the system thinking processes itself. So systems thinking is a way, I don't know how many of you know about Herbert Simon's decision-making method. So Herbert Simon also, when he gave this concept of how decisions should be made, and he talked about two very unique concepts of bounded rationality and the concept of sufficing, is another remarkable contribution to how decisions, or rather rational decisions, should be made. But when we say the word rational decisions, we should be cognizant of the fact that we cannot be sure about our decisions being 100% rational, because the knowledge that we have is often limited. Our understanding of options available to solve a problem is also limited. So there are natural limits to our ability to come to the best possible decision. But within the realm of decision making, if we know, say, 5 options, out of the 5 options, which appears to be the most rational option is what Herbert Simon was talking about. And he uses the word bounded rationality because he is admitting to the fact that we cannot be sure of all the options. So it's an understanding of the limit of human mind to be able to perceive all the options at a particular time. And then he uses a second very significant concept of sufficing, which is a blending of 2 terms, satisfaction and sufficing. So he's saying that no decision can be 100% satisfactory, but if it suffices, it's good enough, we need to go ahead with the decision. So systems thinking is also kind of a very holistic perspective. It's a very encompassing perspective. It's a discipline of seeing the whole rather than part. As you can see, the definition, which is being reflected on your slide here. And this is the definition which is given by Peter Senge, who is an author of Fifth Discipline, Art and Practice of Learning Organization. And he says that we have to be able to identify the patterns of the change and not just focus ourselves with static snapshots. And we need to have the ability to interconnect the subtle, certain connections which may be there between what was happening and what was the problem all about. Now, going to the next slide, you will see that what is kind of out-of-box thinking. Systems thinking and traditional thinking are 2 different way of processes of thinking. We are often trained to do that traditional way of thinking where we are unidirectional. We look at a problem and we look at a solution. But systems thinking is trying to sort of encourage you to be able to connect this multiple dots, to able to, draw out this kind of patterns which may exist, which at the first sight of a problem, first looking at a problem, you may miss it. So it is kind of a digging deeper into the issues which can be missed at the first glance. Now, in the policy sciences, for example, when policy formulation is taking place, it is important that we see the whole picture. For example, when we talk about women empowerment is not just a financial concept. Women empowerment is linked to the cultural aspect also. So when policy making just focuses on the financial aspect of women empowerment, you are missing a point that there is a large cultural, social, economic ethos and practices which may be curbing a woman to go out and get education, get employment. So you may open a school, but what is actually needed is a change in the mindset of the family, change in the mindset of the community where she belongs. So identification of a problem should not be an isolated event. The identification of a problem and thereby the policy making process itself should be able to sort of see the whole canvas within which the problem actually resides. So how does the systems thinker work? So system thinkers usually need to have certain personality traits. You may have some of these personality traits already, but if you don't have, it is kind of encouraged that you should cultivate these personality traits, because that will allow you to be a problem solver in whatever domain you may choose to be in. So problem solving is not per se limited to public sector or social enterprise sector. Problem solving is as much part of the private sector, business sector, political sector, social sector, cultural sector. So if you are in the workspace, you're bound to get these challenges and difficulties where the quick decision making is needed. So when you have to make choices, when you have to choose between the options available to you, you need to have certain abilities, certain skill sets, certain traits about how a system thinking can be inculcated. So you need to have, of course, the curiosity, because unless and until you scan the space completely, unless and until you're aware about what has happened to the problem and not just rely on the superficial information about the problem, you cannot be a systems thinker. So curiosity, you need to be able to look into a problem very deeply and intricately, innately, closely are important traits of a systems thinker. You need to have an openness of the mind. You should not be very rigid. You should be very, very flexible. You should be open to ideas. You should be mindful. You should be curious. Again, curiosity and openness are somewhat linked personality traits, because if you are closed, if you're so much in a shell, you will stop being curious also. So you will feel that you know it all, and thereby develop this complacency and rigidity to change itself. So you should have strong interpersonal skills. So if you hold a management position, if you are a supervisor, if you are a decision maker, if you are a CEO, if you're a bureaucrat, you need to have this constant communication with your team, cutting across both. You need to have vertical communication, and you also need to indulge in horizontal communication with your contemporaries, with your peer groups, with your co-supervisors, so that and that kind of interpersonal skills become very, very significant in problem solving. That is why in today's new education policy, you will see that communication and cognitive abilities have been placed very, very important, a significant factor in the process of educating the students itself. Is not just about giving information and clearing exams and getting marks. It is about how you interact with the community. How are you clearly and candidly, express yourself to your co-workers, to your supervisors, has become very, very important skill to be acquired. Communication is indispensable a skill in the modern times. I would say that clear communication skills is what is needed. And then you need to have to be able to ask right questions. So if you enter a field of problem and then you have wrong set of questions, you're looking at the wrong side of the prism, then you are bound to arrive at wrong answers. So right questions are very important to arrive at right answers itself. And then what is important is that how do you navigate through the complexity? In today's time, you are not just about thinking about simple solutions. The world has become complex. We are navigating through very, very ambiguous, complex, uncertain times itself. So it becomes important that you have this ability of navigating through these complexities. And last but not the least is about having analytical skills itself. And because once you have this ability of curiosity, interpersonal skills, ask right questions, you navigate through complexities, you need to have this critical ability of sort of understanding the problem, and good analysis is again a step forward to coming at a correct answer. And tolerance to ambiguity. You must have heard the term VUCA, that is, we live in the world which is VUCA. VUCA is an acronym where V stands for volatile, U is uncertain, C is complex, and A is ambiguous. So current times are labeled as VUCA times, and since we are living in ambiguity, we don't have concrete answers. We need to have tolerance for ambiguity also. And this is how the systems, this is a sort of a diagram which has been taken from the systems thinking methods. That means if you are a systems thinker, what are the habits which we need to have as a systems thinker? And if you just read the flow of what this system, this is an example of what this system thinker is doing and how he's connecting, navigating through problems, deleting the options, looking into all the options, and then arriving at a solution. So it is just a very, very simple pictorial depiction of systems thinking, that you need to have this long lens, far-sightedness to sort of identify all the elements, then rule out the elements, and then come to a correct example. You, for your own, if you pick up a problem of education, for example, you can make your own design like this. You can make an own design like this, which is talking about systems thinking in this way. In fact, I do give this exercise to my students when I'm teaching the course on social enterprise, that you identify a problem and draw the various, kind of a labyrinth or multiple factors, the various parts to it, and then connect it to arrive at the best possible solution. So it's a good exercise for you individually also to undertake if you want to learn about how systems thinking is done. So, just as a, caveat, I need to put this on record, that systems thinking is not that can be, planted into somebody's mind. System thinking is practiced. It is, you will have to practice in your own life that how have you been taking decisions about your life. For example, from your undergraduation to post-graduation, what are the options? What do you look into? So you can draw a similar chart like this and arrive at a solution which you think would be the best option. So you can do your own kind of what is technically known as SWOT analysis, SWOT, that is your strength, weakness, opportunities, and strengths, and look into the whole connectivity of job opportunities, courses available within Delhi, outside Delhi, within India, outside India. What are your friends doing? What are the job options available? How can I reach my goal in next 5 years or 10 years? Where do I see myself? All these are, I'm talking about your individual space, not as a manager or supervisor. You can adopt this systems thinking to come to right, not absolutely right. No decision can be foolproof. Every decision you take has the element of risk, because you can control your end of the decision making, but there are certain exogenous external factors which you may not have control of. So how you cannot do that, but within the realm of your control, can you arrive at a right decision is a methodology which can be used if you adopt the systems thinking. Now, within the systems thinking itself, another way of thinking is talked about, and again, it has become very, very popular of late in about last 2 decades, is about design thinking. And design thinking itself can be offered as a full course, but I'm just going to run through quickly about what is a design thinking. So the new design thinking model includes the following 4 steps. It is a step-by-step approach. That means first you need to explore, ideate, prototype, and execute. These are the 4 important stages of design thinking. And design thinking is particularly relevant for social enterprises and for social entrepreneurs. If you want to create a social business, you need to explore, you need to ideate, you need to create prototype, and you need to execute. And it is a kind of an iterative, repetitive, incremental, cyclical, and concentric process of exploring, ideating, prototyping, and executing. So the process should be repeated at your own individual level until it is brought to an acceptable level. So when you indulge in design thinking, just like systems thinking, that you would not just sit with the paper and pen and formulate an idea, and here I write it, and this is the final thing, and this is the best idea I have come across, and let's go ahead with it. This is not what design thinking is. Design thinking is iterative. You have to continue doing it. Keep honing your ideas, keep chiseling your ideas, making it, look at it through, all perspectives, through all angles. Incrementalism is another thing, that you can't just arrive at your decision and one shot or one go. And then it is cyclical, and it's a constant concentric circle processes where you keep drawing and redrawing, and then you come to a correct answer. So if I have to expand the whole design thinking framework, it would look like this. And this has been taken from Stanford School of Design Thinking process. And what do we need to do? So if you look into these boxes, that is first empathy, then define, ideate, prototype, and test. Now, what is empathizing? Empathizing is a method by which you, personally can experience what the other person is experiencing. For example, the pain of the people who are going through some illnesses. If you meet a cancer patient, you sitting in your home would not be able to fathom and comprehend the problems of that particular person unless and until you go and meet. So empathy is kind of a method by which you get to understand and you become non-judgmental. You try to live and try to get into the shoes of that particular person, and then look into the perspective, look into the situation that particular person is going through. So if you are a policy maker, or if you are a business person, if you are a think tank, if you don't actually meet and empathize and have this experiential learning where you go to the person, to the cancer hospital, to the if you want to solve the problems of illiteracy, you need to go to that areas where people are still illiterate. If you need to go to the understand the problem of, for example, healthcare, you need to go and visit that places where people are facing health challenges. If you need to understand the problem of lack of water facility, you need to go to a village where the water is not available and women travel 10 kilometers in the morning to get a pot of clean water to their home. So without this kind of empathy, without this kind of shadowing, without this kind of non-judgmental opinion, you cannot move forward. And then once you have this empathy, you move on to the next stage, that is about defining a problem. And how do you define a problem? You need to have this clear perspective. You need to have this understanding about what the need are, what the role and objectives are, and what needs to be decided, and what are the points, that the pain points, challenges, and the decisions that we need to take. Pain points is something similar to what I have said in the case of empathy. And then the third step is to ideate. Once you have soaked in the emotions of the person or of an issue, the next step is to define. And after you've defined it, you need to have an idea, because ultimately you're just not scanning the system. Your whole idea in the design thinking framework is that you should be able to give a solution to the problem. So ideating is a stage where you develop an idea or a solution to the problem, and then you share the idea with your mentor, for example, with your collaborator, with somebody already existing in the field. You share your idea, not that you straight away jump and start executing your idea. That will be short-sightedness. You have to sort of discuss, because somebody who is more experienced in the field, you have to share your idea with your superiors, with your partners, with people who are experts in that field. And then you have to see whether the idea was worthy or not, because it may happen that the particular idea which you think is fabulous may not actually be one, and there were many holes in the theory that you have thought about or created for yourself. So, and then you diverge or converge, that if the idea requires more interconnections, more research, more data, then you go ahead and do that. And then you start, and if the idea is fine, you start kind of prioritizing about what should be the next step, because your idea seems doable, your idea seems realizable, your idea seems executable and implementable. And then once your idea with this honing, with the chiseling has been accepted, you create a prototype. Prototype is a very, very important step. It's kind of a mock exercise where you don't do the real thing, but you create that stimulus, you create that stimulating environment by which you are creating this mock-up things where you are sort of in that scenario, but and trying to visualize what could be the possible things which may happen in the system if I execute the idea. So looking into all the possible pros and cons and good and bad points, negative possibilities and positive possibilities is a stage of mocking up. You create strong boards, you keep it very simple and straight at the prototype stage. And then you, if, and this is a very, very important point, and I underscore this point, because if your idea is not good enough, it is important to fail fast. Fail fast is a very important concept, because unless and until, if your idea is not good enough, there is no point in sitting with that idea for years, hoping for some magic to happen. So it is important to fail fast so that you can create another idea, work on the same idea, maybe create more collaborators, and then arrive at a solution. And you sort of iterate quickly, you continue to work on that idea, keep testing the idea. And if it is a good idea, if you don't want to fail fast, you see the strength, you've got good feedback, you've got good review of your idea, you see possibilities, the experts have given a thumbs up, please go ahead. Then you go and test your idea in the real ground situations. Then you get to understand the impediments, what works, what does not work, is an example of testing. So prototyping and testing. Testing is on a larger scale, prototyping is at a very, very small scale. And once you test the idea is still, has the merit to it, it's still sellable, you go ahead and go full scale on that idea, make it executable. So design thinking framework for innovation can also be understood in this kind of circular, loop. It's a loop if you see it, but it has the same steps: empathize, define, ideate, prototype, and test. You begin from the blue zone, move to the green zone, then go to the yellow zone and prototype, and then test. And if you're successful at the testing stage, congratulations, and you've done well. But if you don't, you have to start the process again at this stage about what is a problem, why it is important. Ask these fundamental questions. I said that asking correct questions is very, very important. How can you solve it? And what do we create to solve this problem? And does it work or not? So these are the fundamental questions you need to ask. And it's of course a very, very concept which is very, very significant for social enterprises, but it is also significant in your own personal domain for any workspace, I would say. And then how to design a better world is again coming from the same space. We are sort of talking about it in a more elaborate manner, where what can exploration mean? You begin with exploring, you begin with ideating, you talk about prototyping and then executing. But here we are breaking down the exploration process also further down to empathizing, to defining, to initiating, to systematic thinking, to feedback mechanism, iterating, testing, refining, and then implementing. So it's a kind of a circular method. And it doesn't mean that once you've executed and implemented, that's an end of the story. Because believe me, the challenges of being in the market, being in any work would require you to constantly again explore, again find ideas, ideate, prototype, and execute. So it's a never ending, because we live in the world, as I said, we live in the world which is highly disruptive, ambiguous, complex. So no business idea or no idea per se is going to last for next 50 years. The scale and the lifespan of big ideas have actually gone down, that a good idea can, because of the competition in the market, because of the shifting social, economic, political realities, technological realities, the breakthrough in technology will make us look back into what we have produced. So look at the best of the companies in the world. Look at Apple, look at Samsung, look at the best of the car makers. What do they do? Look at the health space. They are constantly upgrading their products and services so that they remain relevant in the market. So even if you have executed idea in 2020, it doesn't mean that you don't think for till 2030. You actually need to think in 2021 and 2022 at how the landscape of the market, the realities around you, how the competitors, how the product line, how the needs of the customers and the clients are shifting and changing. And you need to constantly again explore, ideate, and prototype. So it may seem very complex, but once you get into the habit of design thinking, you will do that automatically. It becomes your reflex action, actually, that the systematic way of thinking becomes your reflex action. And it is a personality trait, actually. Design thinking is a method of personality trait, which takes you very, very far, actually, because then you know how to break down the problem to the basics. You don't get overwhelmed by the problem. You don't get overwhelmed by the issue, but rather you break it down to the small pieces and connect it to the thread of rationality and best options available. So it's kind of psychological training for better living, better handling of situations, disaster or otherwise. It's a significant tool, I believe, that every individual must learn, because if your thinking is right, believe me, half of the problems are solved. So very often we face so many personal problems, official problems in the professional world, psychological problems, issues, sadness. You link it all. It's basically we are not able to sort of look through the problems. Our vision gets very, very foggy. Our vision gets clouded. We are looking at the things from the wrong angle very often. We are thinking about X, Y, Z and not looking and pointing straight onto the problem. You look at yourself, I'm sure, or you have had a number of examples in and around you where the system through which we think was flawed itself. So if the system is flawed, you're bound to come to a wrong decision. So this is a tool, this is a skill which I recommend, not as a teacher of course of social enterprise, but as a person to person. I would request you to start practicing it. Means I myself am not a par excellence design thinker, but once you learn it, you will see that there is more rational in how you are arriving at correct decisions. Because at the age of 20 or 21, believe me, you will have to take multiple decisions from here on, and the onus of the responsibility of these decisions would be on you. So design thinking tools, through this simple method of exploring the options, ideating about it, thinking about it, breaking it down, prototyping it, and discussing it with your peer, your superiors, your friends, and then executing it is the best way to move ahead in life, I would say. So connecting it to the design thinking, to the social enterprise and social innovation, we can say that the whole process of social innovation, it involves through the design thinking, in a way, the 3 Ps and 3 S. That is, what are the prompts, what are the proposals, what are the prototypings, what is sustaining, scaling, and systemic change. And if you take a minute to read through this thing, prompts, what highlights the need of the social innovation? What are the proposals? Now you are connecting it with the design thinking and the systems thinking in a more, intricate manner, that how design thinking gets linked up to social innovation and social enterprise. So prompts, what highlights the need of the social innovation, where the ideas are being developed, where ideas get tested in practice, when ideas become everyday practice, that is when it is becoming sustaining, that everybody is adopting the idea. When ideas begin to grow and spread, the whole social innovation, that is the whole space is beginning to adopt that idea, is when the scaling is happening and systemic change happens at the last stage, where the intensity and the spread of the social innovation is so high that it involves redesigning and introducing and reintroducing and reworking of the entire system, which usually involves that the whole sector itself has taken a big shift and a big change. Okay, so there is a back loop and a front loop to it. The back loop and the front loop, you can look at this and this, whatever we have discussed can be understood as a back loop and the front loop, that once an idea or an organization reaches a maturity, the conversion stage happens and it needs to release the resources for the novelty or the change and to re-engage in exploration in order to retain its resilience. And the release and reorganization phase is often termed as the back loop, where the non-routine changes is introduced. And the last is the exploitation and conversion phase, are often a stage which is termed as the front loop, where change is slow and incremental and more deliberate. I will share this links with you also during the break time, so that you can have a look at the YouTube lecture on design thinking, which will elaborate on the concepts that I have talked about very quickly. But I've covered the key points and key principles about this theme itself. Okay, so I'll stop here, and it's about 12:30 now. So we have a long break, and I will share these videos, and you can watch that video during the break. We reassemble at 2 o'clock today again in the afternoon. Is it fine? So all these YouTubes and some of the links that I'm going to share will help you sort of get more clarity about what I have taught you in this segment. And the last segment will be focused exclusively, more focused on the Indian side of the story of the social enterprise, not in terms of case studies, but in terms of understanding of social enterprises, at where the social enterprises are actually existing and what. And a small bit of it before that, also I'll teach you about the whole business modeling, like this one, that is what should be the objective, how you should strategize, what is social impact. So this is connected to what I have taught you. So what is the business plan informational flow? So these are the small 2 topics which I aim to cover post the lunch session, and and a small idea about where you can go for financing of social enterprises. So 20 minutes of lecture on each of these topics will help us cover the course. It is a paced up course, but I am sure that it has ignited some interest in your mind about the subject itself. So any comments, I'm happy to address in the space of design thinking. If there's something which is not clear to you, we can talk about it for next 5 minutes. And if it's, again, very clear to you, I'm happy to know that. All good? So if it's all good, let me see you after the break at 2 p.m. Okay, goodbye then. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, ma'am.